back with more on News Talk Saga 960. So very glad that you could join us to wrap up your work week right here on the Mark Petronis Show. It gives me great pleasure to bring in Belinda Karahalios, who is the Member of Provincial Parliament for Cambridge in Ontario. And first time that I've had a chance to chat with Belinda, I always accentuate the Greek pronunciation of Karahalios because
You do well.
I was surrounded by, some Greek people. I was mostly Italians, but we had some Greeks as well. So I kind of got used to the pronunciation of the S with that j sound. You know what I'm talking about?
It's very good. And it's confusing for people because my husband, Jim, his family is Greek, but I'm actually, my mother's Portuguese and my dad's Trinidadian. So it's very confusing for people
Wow.
sometimes.
Well,
Yeah.
that's an interesting mix. Well, good for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about Bill 12.
Yes.
A bit of a surprise and a bit of a win for you. Now you're an independent of it. You're not a PC person anymore. You're sitting in you're New Blue, correct? You're a member of the New
Correct.
Blue Party,
Yes.
an upstart party in Ontario that's conservative minded, conservative leaning, if that's fair to say.
It is.
Perhaps a reminder to Ontarians that not everything that the Ford government has done is conducive to conservative principles. But let's get back to Bill 12. First of all, tell me what Bill 12 represented.
So Bill 12 was put forward by the member for Ottawa South, John Fraser. He's part of the Liberal caucus. Nice guy. He voted in favor and supported my Bill 150 back in 2019, the bill that I put forward to fight against voter fraud and make it illegal to do things like ballot stuffing in an internal party election. And I very much appreciate his support on that. But he put through his Bill 12, which would mandate vaccinations for all those working in healthcare and in the education sector. And he had a little thing about exemptions, but it would follow identically to the exemptions that are currently allowed, which is that very slim, if you've had a reaction to the vaccine, the first dose, then you could get one from your medical provider with an end date for when you could get that second shot, or the human rights side of things. And as your listeners and you may know, that the Human Rights Tribunal has made it extremely challenging to be able to get an exemption based on any type of human right.
Okay, so it was a private member's bill that was tabled.
Correct.
So normally those don't pass anyway. But well, go ahead. Did you want to pipe in?
Well, they sometimes do, right? Like the PCs they pass a lot of their own private members' bills, and sometimes to kind of pass the olive branch, so to speak, they will choose specific bills from opposition, whether it's NDP or Green or Liberals, to show that they can work together, and they'll pass those. So there's always a chance that these things can pass, and I don't want to take that chance.
Right. So you oppose this bill. It would have made it mandatory for people in certain sectors of the education and healthcare industries, if you want to call it sectors, to be vaccinated. We're seeing a lot of pushback from people, a lot of nurses, for instance. We're talking about thousands of nurses. Is it 15%? That's my understanding, Belinda, of people in the healthcare sector who do not want to get vaccinated, who have not declined so far to get the vax?
That's the number that I'm hearing as well. And I think the part that is troubling is the labels that the PC party is putting on these individuals. They're calling them anti-vaxxers, but you can't do that to people, right? The people aren't getting vaccinated for a myriad of reasons. And it could be past infection where they have really strong immunity. Maybe they have a family member who's sustained a vaccine injury in the past. Maybe they just don't want it because they don't know about the technology or the long-term side effects. Those are all valid reasons and should be respected. And it's no one's business whether or not you have or have not received a vaccine.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suspect that a lot of those people who are calling pro-vaccine choice people anti-vaxxers are probably pro-choice on the abortion file. We'll just say, well, are you anti-baby? Are you anti-childbirth? Is that what being pro-abortion is? I mean, by the same rationale, that would apply. But of
Yes.
course, they often are hypocrites on that front anyway. So what is the status in Ontario right now? I mean, well, you've got the vaccine certificate. I'm hearing that some people are doing what they can to get around it. I'm hearing a lot of stories of fake certificates going around. Ontarians on the surface may be on side, but when you scratch the surface, you find a lot of people who think this is absolutely outrageous and unnecessary. What are you hearing?
I'm hearing much of the same. And it's not just those who are not vaccinated or those who do not wish to disclose their vaccination status. It's also those who are vaccinated who do not like the idea of a mandate. I mean, you've got parents who do not wish to disclose their vaccination status can't accompany their children into a sports facility to help them play sports. You've got these kids who've been very much isolated over the last 18, 19 months between school closures and lockdowns and not having any activities. And now they're saying, oh, vaccine mandate, if you don't show me your proof of vaccination, you can't accompany your child, or if you don't want to, if there's no one to accompany your child can't participate. And you are segregating people. There's no other way another word to use. You are segregating people based on medical choices, and it's wrong.
Yeah, and the premier himself acknowledged that back when he was opposed to the idea, or seemingly opposed to the idea of vaccine passports, saying that it would divide Canadians, divide Ontarians. And now, of course, we see that that's exactly what it's doing. And there seems to be even a network of restaurants, for instance, where certain people know, and it's like speakeasies. We're going back to the days of prohibition in the States. I don't know if did we have prohibition up here? I don't think we did. But you hear stories where, certain areas you could go and you could do things that they can't do.
And it's
elsewhere.
Interesting listening to Lisa McLeod in Question Period the other day, and she's the horror that there's restaurants in Ottawa that are not enforcing the vaccine passport. And I'm thinking, good for them. It is their business. It is their blood, sweat, and tears, their money. They invested their time and money into these businesses. If they don't want to enforce vaccine passports because they don't agree with the premise after having been forced to close their doors 3 times in the last 18 months, good for them. And I think it's funny, you talk about Doug Ford and he's saying, oh, he's against it. He doesn't want the 2-tier society. And then he does it anyway. That has been the last, again, 19 months with him. It's, I don't want to do mandatory masks. And he knocks it down to 2 years of age. I don't want to do a regional approach. Then he does a regional approach. Then he backs up to a provincial approach. Like he says things that he thinks his base wants to hear, and then just doesn't follow through with it in the hopes that people are going to forget in June and say, oh no, he was actually conservative. He did what he said he was going to do. He hasn't.
Exactly. And by the way, we did have prohibition in Canada, 1918 to 1920.
Oh, thank you.
Those days are long gone, but sometimes it feels like they're coming back. So I suspect that the government's going to bring in a rat line, where you can maybe get rewarded by the government getting a pat on the head for ratting certain people out. It's going to get ugly, though. You can really sense it. But you're seeing pushback, and I suspect that there's a lot of people in Ontario who will, frankly, stay home. People may have supported Doug Ford in 2018 when he won handily. Maybe this time around they're going to say, if he's not going to be very conservative, then what exactly am I voting for?
Well, I hope those people will think about New Blue, the New Blue Party of Ontario, newblueontario.com. We are a new party, and we are a center-right party, and it's a new home for those who have felt abandoned by Doug Ford. And the funny thing is the people who have been contacting us, they're from all parties. It's not just the conservative voter who feels abandoned by Doug Ford and the PC party. We're getting people from the Liberals, from the NDP, people who never voted before, who are realizing how important it is to get engaged in the political process.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can certainly understand that some Liberals would want to, maybe some blue Liberals, right?
Yes.
Liberals who've started to feel abandoned, not only by the provincial party, which has become a radical left-wing party, certainly on the environmental front, and they've been an anti-economic, anti-free market party. Maybe they're looking for another option, and they might look at New Blue and think as a legitimate place to go. On the federal scene, we saw people abandon Aaron O'Toole in droves. Hundreds of thousands of people who voted Conservative in 2019 did not vote Conservative in 2021 because they saw the direction of the party moving in a way that was not conducive with to conservative principles that you and I have long agreed with and appreciated and respected. And if you're not going to respect those, then who are you exactly? Well, what are you running for? You're just not doing what conservatives expect. You're not behaving. You're not proposing policies that conservatives expect. But okay, so where is Ontario headed now, as you see it, in terms of what's happening with these vaccine certificates, in terms of the economy rebounding? And I know this is a toughie. Uh, I mean, one of the selling points was that, well, soon as we, hand down these vaccine passports, everybody gets vaxxed, the economy can start rolling again. But we're getting strong indications, Belinda, and you know it as well as I do, that the economy is not bouncing back, that somehow these vaccine passports or certificates are not a cure-all at all for the economy, for the economic woes facing Ontario and other provinces. What do you think?
So it's interesting because you got the PCs implementing these vaccine passports as like a safety. Like, don't worry, if we implement them, then we're not going to lock you down a fourth time. That was the thing. So I believe a lot of businesses grudgingly said, okay, fine, we're going to do this. They also don't want to get fined because there are fines attached to not obeying these public health orders. But we're going to see two types of people, right? The ones who are so terrified of COVID, and I don't blame them, because the media, like not you, but like a lot of other media outlets, have been pushing this fear narrative for the last 2 years almost, and politicians as well. So they're even though they're double vaxxed, potentially double masked, all those things, they're not going to restaurants. It's not safe, quote unquote safe, right? Then you've got the other side who are saying, hey, I'm not vaccinated, or I don't want to disclose my vaccination status, and I'm not going to go out because you won't let me in because you're doing a vax passport. Shame on you. And you got these poor restaurants stuck in the middle, or the economy, I guess, stuck in the middle, right? Saying, well, I have to enforce this because I'm going to get penalized. And they're doing everything they can. And on top of that, they've got these capacity restrictions on top of that, and server shortages and workforce shortages. It's a mess. It is an absolute mess. And to get out of this, I think it's going to take a while, because if you were to say tomorrow, for example, no more mask mandate, no more vax mandate, we're back to normal, I guarantee you that there's going to be a large percentage of the population who would still wear their masks, who would still not go outside, because of it's been 2 years of this. It's, I wear my mask to protect you. My vaccine is only going to work if you get the vaccine too. And then you've got the science, which is always changing. And I'm hesitant to quote science because it's changing so quickly. But now they're saying that the vaccine, the antibodies that you get from this vaccine, the mRNA one specifically, is decreasing by the time you hit 6-8 months.
Yeah.
So then what's the difference between Mr. double vaccinated and the person who's not 6 months? Like, there's no difference. So what are we doing here exactly?
Yeah, exactly. And people who are vaccinated are getting COVID. We know that for a fact. That is scientifically proven many, many times over, and spreading COVID.
Yes.
And so, I mean, who's safer? Who would you rather be around? Somebody who just got tested and can prove they just got tested and have a negative test to show for it, or somebody who got vaxxed, I don't know, 3-4 months ago and may have it and not even know it?
The perfect example is me at the legislature, right? Like, I refuse to disclose my vaccination status because it's nobody's business. So I go for the antigen testing twice a week in order to come to Queen's Park. The member from Chatham, Kent, Leamington, Rick Nichols, he also does the same thing. And everyone else has shown their papers. So we know for sure that myself and Rick, we totally don't have COVID because we're testing negative and coming in. Everyone else, we don't know what's going on with them because we don't know when they got vaccinated. We don't know. They can still carry it. Yes, the vaccine works in terms of severity, but they can still carry it. They can still transmit it.
Yeah, their symptoms may not be evident, but they've got it and they're transmitting it.
Precisely.
So, I mean, if you're talking about spreaders here, it's probably, I mean, if you're not vaccinated and you get it, you may very well be manifesting symptoms and probably stay home or get treatment. But if you are vaccinated, you may not be exhibiting the symptoms, but you're out there thinking, hey, look at me, I'm double vaxxed. Meantime, you're a spreader, right?
Exactly.
I mean, it's absolute craziness. It's a real mess. It's sad what has happened because it's divided people. It has created a second class of Canadians, right? I mean, you've got your first class, according to the Prime Minister, and you've got your second class. And I think the coming election is going to be interesting because it'll be, I suspect, a kind of referendum on how Doug Ford has managed the pandemic, whether or not he did a good enough job. I suspect the Liberals are going to vote Liberal. Maybe some of them voted for Doug last time around, but they always go home inevitably. And the Democrats are probably going to stick with their party.
Yep.
Will Tories, support Doug in the same way that they did a couple of years back? Well, that remains to be seen. And now here you are in your party providing an alternative.
That's right.
Correct?
That is correct. NewBlueOntario.com. I'm going to plug it again.
Belinda Karahalios, thank you so much. Really
Thank you
appreciate you tuning or coming on the show for the very first time. Please come back.
I will. Thank you. It was such a pleasure.
All right. And we're going to take a brief timeout. Commercial break. Back with more on News Talk Saga 960 after this.